Well, we're up to 140 members of the U.S. House who now plan to object to the results of the election on January 6th, which is next Wednesday. I was going to try and do like a New Year's type of, episode today, but, I figure until January 6th comes, I'm going to cover the new stuff that comes out about this. Now, that doesn't mean that every day until Wednesday is going to be about, follow-ups to this. But there seems to, over the holiday, come, a bit more news on this. And the momentum definitely seems to be moving in this direction towards the electoral challenge, which by no means is a sign that it's going to be successful. I never thought that it was going to be successful, but if they put up a decent fight, optically, that will be very, very beneficial. If it doesn't look like it's just a couple of lone kooks, if it's not just Mo Brooks out there all by his lonesome, saying, hey, there's a problem here, and everyone else says, shut up, Mo, you're making us look bad, it lends a lot more credibility to it. When you have 140 members of Congress all objecting, there's strength in numbers. That in and of itself will lend credibility in the eyes of many Americans to this effort. Now, of course, I think that'll only have an effect on people who are already predisposed to like Republicans and Trump to begin with, people who are, more passionately on the left or passionately Democratic, because I don't think that most Democrats are passionately left-wing based on the way that they talk these days about wars and such. But somebody like that will just see a large number of Republicans objecting as sign, as another sign that the Trump cult has taken over the Republican Party. Now, the other effect is that I think it'll put more pressure on senators to object too, because if you have, sort of your more conservative oriented members of Congress, or I guess at least the guys who try and appeal to those kinds of voters, putting up a fight in the House, then people like, Ted Cruz, for example, certainly Tom Cotton, anyone who is, 2024 minded, i.e. Josh Hawley, who's already come out and said he will object, Tommy Tuberville, I think, is pretty guaranteed. There will be multiple senators who are going to object. And so we're getting to the stage to where people are bandwagoning, to where they feel like, hey, I want to be on this side. I want to be associated with this effort. And so I think that that'll also mean that there will be a lot of people in the House and potentially the Senate who are eager to get up and make the case. I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans who see this as something that they could use as a springboard for their career. I think we need to have no illusions about that. I mean, these guys they're politicians, so they're going to do what's in their best interest. I've thought much longer than apparently they have that what they're going to do is in their best interest. I think it's in their best interest politically to fight as hard as they can on this issue. I think that their voters will reward them for that. And so you will see quite a lot of Republicans who, for lack of a better term, will want to get out there and grandstand on this issue. But again, their grandstanding will be useful because they will create clips that will get shared around if they hopefully, cite real evidence, bring up, real things like this testimony from yesterday in Georgia where, they have witnesses saying that people were changing military ballots. That's something that's worth looking into. And needless to say, this is going to be a bigger fight that's been put up against the certification of the Electoral College than any election probably since 1876. Certainly going to be bigger than the effort in 2016, in which you did have, and in 2004, when you did have Democrats, objecting, but it wasn't, it wasn't something that got a lot of media attention, and it wasn't something that a ton of people did. It's not like you had half or a third of the Democratic caucus in the House, or certainly not in the Senate, objecting to the results of the election in in a few states. And so Biden may potentially start his term out even more delegitimized than Trump was when he started his. And they did a lot to delegitimize Trump before he got in there. I don't know if people remember at this point 4 years ago, but you had Mike Flynn was working with the Russians to do whatever evil deeds Trump was doing. He was coordinating with them. Oh, they needed to get him on the Logan Act, and this was all going on during the transition before January 20th when Trump was sworn in. And so you had a good, a decent chunk of the country convinced that Trump was a Russian agent, but not enough so to really put up a decent fight on whatever the day was that they counted the electoral votes back then. If we see a lot of fireworks on January the 6th, then I think that has the potential to radicalize an even bigger portion of the country against Biden, or at least against his legitimacy, maybe not against him personally, although politics is always personal, isn't it, these days? And that sort of energy throughout the country, particularly in red states, will be quite useful, because that will empower politicians down the chain, not just people in the House and the Senate, but more importantly, state legislatures and governors, to take on the federal government. They'll be incentivized to do that. Not only because you have the latent Federalist energy within the Republican Party, if the president is considered, totally illegitimate by vast majority of your constituents, it's in your political interests to fight back against that guy, to go out of your way to disobey, to nullify federal law or perhaps executive edicts. So, for example, if there's some kind of ban on online ammo sales, perhaps certain states like Florida could rebel against that and try to, keep such sales alive, citing the Second Amendment, saying that, the Constitution's much more important than, the president. It's a bigger determining factor, especially when the president was not legitimately elected. Wink, wink. When the president is delegitimized, he's deprived of power. He no longer has moral authority. Now, to someone like me, no politician has any moral authority, but to the average American, they do, because supposedly, we all vote for these people. They're our leaders. We all agree that we're gonna, get in line and cast a ballot for who we want, and we agree to obey the commands of whoever it is that wins, even if it's the guy we don't like. But if people who truly believe in democracy, as cringe as that is, if they believe that the democratic process is thoroughly corrupt, then that whole arrangement, that agreement, breaks down. And something that our founders understood is that the vitality of any government is dependent on the consent of the governed. People can't very easily just seize power. That power must be delegated to them by those who are willing to obey. And so if people choose not to obey, then the federal government, the president, these terms are meaningless. They're abstractions that we create in our mind. And so we want as much of this country to be prepared to tell the president to go to hell whenever the time comes. These 140 members of Congress would not be going out on a limb here if they didn't feel like their constituents were pushing them in that direction. And so this should be exciting news today. I think that things are going in the right direction. I would be disappointed if we came down to January 6th and you did not have at least this many congressmen objecting, because the House is supposed to be much more in touch with the will of the people. I know that's kind of a joke. The House really isn't, but when things are when there's a strong enough feeling in the country, the U.S. representatives should be, they should be the first to recognize that, at least in Washington. I mean, the House was set up as sort of the populist wing of the federal government. Tomorrow I'm going to try and take a break from all the election stuff. Hopefully, this Saturday after New Year's is going to be quiet on election news, and I can take some time to focus on the economy or something else, because, I'm tired of talking about election stuff. I was hoping that I'd be done talking about the election in November, but of course that just didn't end up being the case. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of my chronicling of the decline and fall of the American empire, I would appreciate you clicking like and sharing this video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.